Russia being a country that is against immigration and a country that is seen as non-woke, right? I just think it's become this thing now where in America it's about old school conservative values versus quote unquote woke. And I do think a big reason that Republicans are more sympathetic to Putin or Russia now, they do see some of those old conservative values in terms of anti-immigration, maybe a more religious country, and some of the LGBTQ plus whatever we want
Yes.
to call it, some of the stuff that has been kind of crazily talked about in the United States for the last, especially 5 years. They feel like Russia's not all about that, and I think that's part of it. What do you think? Maybe it's a big part of it.
I think it's a huge part of it. I think you really make a good point. The, for lack of a better term, cultural conservatism, religious conservatism. And in fact, you saw it in that Tucker Carlson interview with Putin. He asked him about religious faith and how it played for him and how he thought about it in society. And Putin kind of, it was funny because Putin kind of brushed it off. It didn't really, I don't think Putin picked up what Carlson was saying. But I think what he was saying is the reason that he and many other people are sympathetic, let's just say, to Russia and other authoritarians is because they view the cultural conservatism, the religious conservatism, the cracking down on LGBTQ. Like Russia is like, red states on steroids when it comes to dealing with trans people, and so that is a huge, of course, that is a massive part of it. And also law and order, toughness, cracking down on crime. Like, what did Tucker Carlson show if you saw any of his videos? Because he was in Russia for like 8 days. It wasn't just a Putin interview. He went around and he talked about how great Moscow was. Look how clean their subways are. Look how orderly their grocery store is, even though it was absolutely ludicrous because, as so many people have pointed out on social media, the reason groceries are cheaper in Russia is because Russia is a far poorer country than America. So of course, if you go to any poor country as an American, things are going to cost a lot less, right? If you go to some poor country in the Caribbean or in Africa, you're going to be able to buy a lot of things. In Russia, the average Russian makes about $800 a month and spends about half of that on groceries. So the idea that Russia is somehow this utopia is ludicrous. It's preposterous because they have clean subways, but it gives you a window into that mindset that having a severe crackdown on crime, the Christian and cultural conservatism, the clean subways, that is as important or more important than, I don't know, jailing your political opponents, rigging elections, not having a free and open press. The idea that that trade-off would in any way not only not be worth it, but would even be worth discussing as if they're similar. Like, well, yeah, okay, maybe we don't have any political freedoms, and maybe we'll go to jail if we say something bad about Putin. But man, that subway's really clean. I love going down to that subway and not have to worry about graffiti. It's absolutely crazy. And I get back to what it makes me wonder if people really believe it or if they're just like playing a bit. And with Tucker Carlson, I think it's the playing a bit, but with other people, I think they really believe it. And so, and maybe he does too. I mean, maybe I'm being too hard on him. Maybe, I don't know what's worse, really believing it or just kind of saying it because you think it's going to get you, make you money, for lack of a better term. I'm not sure which is worse, but I think you absolutely nailed it. I think that is what it's about. And it's crazy, right? It really is, because what it leads to is policy. Because, like, if you have a personal opinion that you like Vladimir Putin or admire him for some reason, or you think life would be better in Russia, and that's just your personal opinion, it doesn't matter. But when you have influence and when you have power, what does it result in? It results in things like not voting, pressuring the House of Representatives to not support a bill that would help Ukraine, which, if you've been following, they're really desperate right now. They're literally running out of ammunition, fighting against an invading country that's trying to steal their land, an ally of ours, a democracy fighting against Putin. And Putin does all of these things to us. The intelligence that he's going to put potentially a nuclear weapon in space, the fact that there was another story breaking as we're coming on, as we're doing this on Wednesday, where another American was arrested on Russia on somewhat questionable charges today, doing killing Navalny, doing all of these things, spitting in our face, and we won't even help a democratic ally fight against him in Ukraine. It's an incredible sign of where we are in America right now and kind of the weakness of that foreign policy argument.
And I did see the Tucker little bit on the Subway and also the grocery store, and I'm laughing. And by the way, I then saw Jon Stewart rip into Tucker Carlson, so I'm not trying to take all Jon Stewart's material here, but I did find it funny. I think Jon Stewart, I will give him credit. He said it perfectly when he was basically saying the difference in the price of groceries is the literal price of freedom, right? Between the
That's a
countries.
great line.
That was a great line. I also found it funny. You know how like you hear like people that are out of touch, they have no idea what a jug of milk costs. You know, like what does that cost? They've never been in the
Right.
grocery store. I just found it so funny when Tucker was messing around with the shopping cart. He's clearly never been to Aldi. Hey, if Aldi wants to sponsor, I've been an Aldi fan my whole life. Hey, they got organic now. It's always been cheaper. They've always done the thing with the 25 cent with the quarter in the cart. That's their
Yeah.
thing. It helps save it. You don't have the carts bump into cars. You don't need to have somebody collect the carts. I just found it funny that Tucker was so out of touch there. And to answer one of your questions there, this is why I personally have never liked Tucker Carlson. And it has nothing to do with politics. By the way, I saw Jordan Peterson live the other day. I have no problem going to watch, even though I didn't enjoy it. I have no problem going and watching. I consume more conservative content. Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, whoever Joe Rogan's interviewing. The thing with Tucker Carlson is he does know better. He goes and he does his bit on the grocery store, and he purposefully, in my opinion, leaves out that context that the reason the groceries, as you said, are cheaper is because nobody has any money. He knows
Right.
that, and he purposefully leaves that out. And that to me is
Right.
worse because you know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's is it worse to be deceitful or ignorant? And I think you're right. I think it is worse to be deceitful. And look, that's the ludicrous element of his argument is even if it were true, right? So let's say it were true that Russia was crushing it financially and Russians were far better off than the average American, which by any objective measure is false. It's just false. And even if that were true, you're giving up to get that all of these liberties, no free press, no fair elections, you're being thrown in jail, right? But at least then you could make the argument, well, look, maybe, it's a terrible authoritarian regime, but hey, the people are doing great. They're making all this money. But no, they're spending the average person in Russia, again, spending half of their monthly salary on groceries. You think inflation's high in America? Could you imagine if we were spending half of our money on groceries? So not only do you have no freedoms, but you have also a much lower quality of life and standard of living. So that is why the argument just is so bizarre on so many levels, unless, and the reason it's maybe not so bizarre is going back to what you said earlier, because it's not about that. It is about, I like these elements of this regime. So to me, those elements that I like make it not so bad in my mind.